Everyone, this is Kevin from the chesswebsite.com, and today we're going to be going over a really easy trap in the Pirc Defense that's going to allow you to get some easy wins. So Pirc Defense usually starts out white playing e4 and then black playing something like d6 and then d4 trying to control the center of the board, followed by knight to f6, knight to c3, and then pawn g6, preparing to get fianchetto the bishop here to g7. And you can see there's a lot of pieces trying to defend and attack this e5 central square. Now, usually, white's going to play either f4. You can see that's attacking this e5 square, or even f3. Both of those are attacking the e5 square. I think a really fun way to play is bring out the dark square bishop here to f4. And that's where our trap is going to start from, adding another piece to this e5 square, but also attacking the entire dark square diagonal here. Black usually, for all of those variations we looked at, usually plays bishop to g7, counterattack the dark squares in the center of the board. And then white's going to be playing pawn to e5, saying, yes, you're fianchettoing your bishop to castle on the king side, get some safety. Before you have time to do that, we want to attack right away. Now, the best move from black in this position is to play knight to h5, attacking the bishop on f4. Since it's under attack, this gets the knight out of harm's way and attacks the piece here on f4. But also pretty common for them just to take on e5. I think you're going to see that more often than not. And after the pawn takes, then queen comes down, exchanges on d1. And after rook to d1, this is where we start to see the trap unfold. Because where does black move from here? One of the most common things that you'll see from black is to play the move knight to d7. And we'll look at what happens if they play something else, maybe like knight to g4 as well. But you can see there's rook on d1 controlling this d file. So knight to d7 makes a lot of sense. The knight's under attack, needs to move that. And so this looks like it's blocking off some of the threats that white has with the rook here on d1. But this loses to the move knight to d5. And this is what we're going to be talking about in the video, because they have fallen for the trap. And it's pretty basic moves from black. They didn't have to do anything crazy. And even if they don't fall for it, white's going to have a pretty good and solid position, still controlling the center of the board. So after knight to d5, really the threat is the knight coming here to c7. Now, one of the ways that black would usually hold on to this pawn on c7 is to play the move knight to a6. But they can't do that because we can just take with our bishop here on a6. And after they capture, we're going to play knight c7. And this is forking the rook here on a8. Now, if we come back, this is the reason we play knight d5 instead of knight to b5. If we play knight to b5, that's not actually going to work because they can play knight a6, defending this pawn, and now our bishop here on f1 cannot take that knight on a6, and so this would be a poor move from white. So instead, we do play the correct move because we watched the video, knight d5, attacking the pawn. And so now, how does black respond from here? They have some huge mistakes they can make. You know, knight takes here on e5, just completely ignoring the threats here. This is even worse than something else they could do, because now we have the threat of not just forking the rook here, but you can see the king can't move to d8 here or d7 because of the rook. The bishop can't even come block anything else because of the knight being the one doing the attacking. So king to f8, and then we have rook to d8. That's going to be checkmate. So they definitely have some really awful moves. Let's look at the not as awful moves. They could see the fork coming, and so king castles on the king side. Okay, well, we can just take here on c7, and then we're going to capture that rook here on a8. Now, they could try some different stuff now. Let's say knight to b6. This is defending the rook here on a8, which we can still capture if we want to. But we can also just play bishop to e3, and that stops everything they were trying to do, because now we can just take this knight, and then there's no way for them to stop us taking the rook here on a8. From here, they could try knight to c6, trying to open things up so the rook here on f8 can defend that. But then we're just going to take with our bishop And then this does open up for the rook to swing over to b8. But now our bishop can come c5. And yes, we did not capture the rook, but we did get a free piece here on b6. And now we still have a very, very dominant position. We still have a knight that's putting a lot of pressure on black. We have a very active bishop here on c5. We can get our light square bishop involved into the game. We can also get our rook involved into the game. So this is going to be a pretty easy end game for white. Now, if we come back, let's say instead of castling on the king side, they say, okay, if you're attacking the pawn c7, let's just go ahead and play king to d8. That stops the immediate threat here, and that is true, but now white has the move pawn e6. And you can see that's one of the reasons that I like bishop on f4 is it allows us to attack this bishop or this pawn here on c7 with our bishop and our knight. See, both of those pieces lined up on this pawn. And so how do they stop it from here? Okay, first they attack and take with their own pawn, attacking our knight. That's fine. We were always going to be taking with our knight on c7. This is, again, attacking the rook on a8. Maybe they play pawn e6 or e5, excuse me, attacking the bishop here on f4. Okay, that's fine because now we can bring our knight back to e6. Attacking the king, check. King comes to e8. Now we take the bishop on g7. You can see we're just gobbling up material. The king is no longer going to be safe the rest of the game for black. King can come to f7, but then bishop h6, holding down this knight, and white's going to have a pretty easy game from here on out. Looked at the knight coming to d7, but if they were to play knight to g4, this would also be a mistake here, trying to get the knight out of harm's way, but we still have the move knight to d5, attacking this pawn on c7. So, you know, if they castle on the king side, we're just going to take here on c7 and easily capture the rook on a8. The slight difference that you could see is if they were to play king d8, trying to hold down this pawn on c7, they've put themselves in a tough position because we have a very, very powerful discovered check, because after the knight moves anywhere, then we're checking our opponent's king, and then we have free reign to just gobble up some pieces with, you know, the most obvious being knight to f6. This is check. King is under attack, so maybe knight d7 blocking that, but then we can just swing down and take this knight on g4. So that is the way that I like to attack the Pirc defense. Really some easy wins that you'll see in this. So remember, after you have your normal setup, instead of playing your f4 or knight to f3, some typical ways that you may play against the Pirc defense, try out bishop here to f4, and after they play bishop g7, push forward e5, and just see how many times they fall for the trap. I think it's going to be more than you would expect. So hopefully guys enjoyed the video. Excited to be making a lot more content for you. If you have any suggestions for videos you want me to make this year, let me know in the comments below. Thank you guys, and I'll see you in the next video.